And I want to start with a place. So there is this levee in Matamoros called El Bordo. When I was a kid, actually, my grandfather will take me there every day after school to fly kites. My grandma used to work at elementary school right up in front of the border and this levee. And while she was still teaching, we needed to buy some time. So my grandpa always took me there. And we spent all afternoon he teaching me how to balance the frame, how to feel when the wind was right, the wind was right, how to launch it. It was a magical place for me, to be honest. It was pure of joy and possibility. But let's fast forward 30 years from that, and that same levee, El Bordo, became home to one of the largest migrant camps on the US-Mexico border. The place where I flew kites became the place where thousands of people lived in tents, waiting for asylum seekers that kept getting footed away. Where, for example, I met Sylvia, whose daughter was tempted to be kidnapped, where families struggled just to find clean water. And that's where I met you all, Solidarity Engineering. You were already there doing the work, building infrastructure, mapping the camps with drones, figuring out sanitation systems. And I was actually trying to figure it out what my role as a researcher even was. And I'm saying that because here's the thing. I started my dissertation project thinking to do something that it was very traditional, a very traditional ethnography, observe, document, analyze, stay objective, think of what you had to do. But then I met Sylvia, but I also met Manuel, who needed to send her daughter across the border alone. I met Kenya, who was pregnant and desperate about having her baby in those conditions, living in that camp. And asking them questions about my research, I kept thinking, well, what the hell am I doing here? And how I'm actually going to help? Because doing just my research is not going to change this. So that's when everything shifted for me. And honestly, you were Solidarity already modeling what I was trying to figure it out. You weren't just helping migrants. You were working with people, centering their experiences about what they needed. And I think you show me and I show you, and we all engage into something that really grew and that today I really treasure. And let me tell you a little bit on the patterns that I found and how working with Solidarity Engineering helped me to see them. So first, I named something that it's called the cycle. Well, I didn't name it. But I use this metaphor of the cycle of violence. And in this fifth pattern, violence at the border operates in this really indicious cycle, and you all live every stage of it. So it's going to start with a policy, and it's going to be this migrant protection protocols who's going to force people into dangerous Mexican cities. And this is a stage one. Policy triggers violence. Then people are going to respond. And this is when Solidarity Engineering and all these other incredible organizations came in. And also asylum seekers started, building ovens. First, they didn't have any place to cook, any place. They were relying only on the food that other organizations like Team Brownsville were bringing to them. And they were like, no, we want to be more active. And they started building their own kitchens, organizing security, creating schools. And what was very important was not only that asylum seekers were actually building, but how they came together with these people who bring the technical expertise they needed to succeed. For example, this drone mapping to understand the space, to engineer sanitation so people wouldn't get sick, data systems that NGOs could coordinate. Then we're going to have another stage that is going to be survival strategies. But here's the paradox. And I think we both together grapple with. The better those strategies work, the better asylum seekers get into trying to figure it out ways to live better in this camp, the more liable the camp became. And then when the more liable the camp became, the less visible the crisis became to the people outside. And that was a big problem. You remember that playground, that beautiful playground that you helped to build. Kids needed that desperately. But also what it means is that if somebody from the outside look at that it's wonderful, that it's beautiful, or like the soccer field, they will feel that there's not such violence and that there's some sort of normalization. And that is going to create some sort of invisibility, not from the people who's suffering or from us who are working there, but from the government who can ignore the crisis. And the US government and the Mexican government definitely fooled, because it wasn't, well, for the US, it wasn't US soil. And for the Mexican government, they basically put people behind a fence and just turn their backs. But your sophisticated response, the engineering, the coordination, it actually help to manage what these policies continue to do. And that is very, very valuable. Another stage that I want to highlight is when the Matamoros camp closed for the first time, the violence didn't end. It moved to Reynosa. And what you did, you moved with that. And that was a crisis for everybody, because Reynosa is 45 minutes away from Matamoros. You were all settled already. You have a place that you recognize, that you know how to navigate, and then just suddenly feel and move into a different city with very different rules. I was born in Matamoros. I have family in Reynosa, but still for me, Reynosa was very foreign, and I cannot. It's hard to understand what that matters for you, and you had to move from Roseville to McAllen, and then get to meet other people to help, and that was fascinating. Like the resilience, not only from the asylum seekers, but also from all these very powerful organizations that most of them, like Solidarity Engineered, were created right there on that levee. There is another pattern, not just this kind of like paradox on help and normalization, but also there is this pattern that I call the ratchet effect. And you witness this progression. So think about ratchet straps. They only go in one direction, tighter, tighter, tighter. And that's asylum policy. That's what is happening to asylum policy. Metering start kind of 2016, then it get worse with the Trump administration in 2018, kind of become permanent. Then MPP in 2019, that's when you really had to mobilize. Government forces over 70,000 people to wait in Matamoros and other cities in Tamaulipas and the Mexican border. Civil society has to fill the gap. Then Title 42, and that's when over 2 million people were expelled, not even with the hope that they may be accepted in the United States at some point. And here's the perverse part. By then, some advocates were like, well, at least MPP gave people court dates, as I was just saying. And the thing is, MPP was not better than Title 42, and it was not better what's happening now. But because each policy is getting worse, we kind of like, oh man, I miss when MPP was a thing, because at least there was a path for these folks to get asylum on horrible conditions, but there was a path. And this is the problem. Each restriction resets what we accept as normal. And now in 2025, asylum is mostly dead, and that's where the ratchet was always heading. You all felt this. Each policy made you work harder, while resources stayed the same or even got worse. And this is basically what in my book I call devolution by design. And this isn't a system failing. It's working exactly as designed. Asylum is being systematically taken apart through predictable patterns. The suffering isn't a side effect, is the point. The cruelty is deterrent. And here's what your work revealed. The sophistication of solidarity engineering's response show how badly government has abandoned its responsibility. You needed engineers, drone technology, data coordination for a camp. That gap between what you have built and what government should help provide, that devolution made visible. You made the invisible visible. Literally, all your work is also political. Your work document the failure while providing care. That's what I mean by engaged research, the research that I learned to do in this camp. That's what collaboration between academic work and humanitarian work should look like. And let me be a little bit as specific on what working together contribute. For the people in the camps, your infrastructure saved lives. The sanitation system prevented disease outbreaks. There was not a huge crisis, for example, during the COVID pandemic. The drone mapping helped coordinate services. All the data systems you created meant people to got what they actually needed. So for my research, you open doors I couldn't have opened. Your relationships, your trust with people, your technical understanding of the challenges, I will have missed that. And you opened me the doors to that. We created knowledge together that neither of us could have produced alone, I believe. Your documentations become part of my ethnographic record, and my analysis, I believe, helped to explain some of the patterns you were experiencing and how to navigate those. But here's what most valuable for me, and that is that you held this impossible tension. You were meeting immediate needs, building, problem solving, keeping people alive, while also documenting failures, questioning why any of this was necessary, pushing for structural change. You show me that humanitarian response and political critique aren't opposites. They have to go together. You told me that infrastructure is political, where you put bathrooms effects who save from assault, for example. We didn't have that in the Matamoros camp, and there were a lot of cases of assaults in the bathrooms. And then when we moved to Reynosa, that was the first thing you were thinking about. So these aren't neutral technical decisions. These are political choices about whose dignity matters. And you model what real collaboration looks. Not we are the experts that will fix you, but working with you asylum seekers, learning for you, building based on your experiences about your own lives. That's solidarity. That's what your name means. And that's why my research approach became, because of working with you. So where does this leave us? The cycle will continue. The work with Solidarity Engineer does it more need than ever, and we have seen this by their expansion. But humanitarian response, however vital, can't fix structural violence. We can keep people alive, and we must, but survival is injustice. We have to interrupt these cycles. We have to address the policies, not just the symptoms. What gives me hope right now is what I saw in your work, the way you combine care and critique, the way you refuse to accept camps as normal while making them more liable. The playground you helped build is still there in El Bordo, rusted and abandoned, but I was just there and it's there. It's a monument of resilience. People building for their kids, even in impossible circumstances. But it is also an indictment. Children shouldn't live in camps. And I think that's the beauty of what you're doing right now with this new playground in Reynosa. It's no longer a camp, it's for a community. My grandfather told me that kites fly because of tension, the pull between what could be. Solidarity engineering work holds that tension, meeting needs today while demanding structural change tomorrow. So providing cares while refusing to accept the conditions. That's what gives me the hope that different futures are still possible. The kites are gone from El Bordo, those kites that I built with my grandpa when I was a child. But the wind still blows, the playground still stands, and people refuse to give up. So thank you for the collaboration. Thank you for the work. And thank you for the opportunity to talk to the people who follow you.